Nicotine, a substance that has shaped economies, influenced cultures, and fueled generations of addiction. It has been chewed, sniffed, smoked, and now vaporised. From the spittoons of the 1800s to the sleek, pocket-sized vapes and pouches of today, nicotine has been ever present, constantly adapting to cultural shifts and scientific scrutiny. Despite increasing awareness of its risks, nicotine remains a billion-dollar industry, deeply embedded in modern lifestyles. This video will explore the history of nicotine consumption. We'll trace its journey from the fields of colonial America to the global industries of today, uncovering how marketing, regulation, and science have shaped its trajectory. We'll also take a look at what the future holds for nicotine consumption. Is a world without nicotine even possible, or will it continue to find new ways to exist? Before the rise of cigarettes, nicotine consumption was a far less glamorous affair. In the 1800s, chewing tobacco was the dominant form, particularly among labourers, farmers, and soldiers. It was practical. Users could keep a plug of tobacco in their cheek while working long hours in the fields, factories, or on the battlefield. However, the habit was far from refined. Chewers had to constantly spit out excess tobacco juice, leading to the widespread presence of spittoons in saloons, offices, and even government buildings. Public spitting was so common that hygiene concerns eventually led to anti-spitting campaigns in the early 1900s, but by then, a new form of nicotine consumption was already taking hold. Across the Atlantic, tobacco use had evolved differently. In Europe, particularly among the upper class, snuff had become the nicotine product of choice. Unlike chewing tobacco, snuff was a finely ground tobacco powder that users inhaled through their noses. It was often scented with lavender, rose, or citrus, adding an air of sophistication. Taking a pinch of snuff and delicately tapping it onto the back of one's hand before inhaling was a ritualised practice among aristocrats, politicians, and intellectuals. It was seen as refined, even fashionable. Porcelain snuff boxes adorned with gold and jewels were prized accessories among the elite. Figures such as Napoleon Bonaparte and King George IV were known snuff users, further cementing its status as a symbol of power and prestige. But even as snuff held its ground in Europe and chewing tobacco maintained a staple in America, the tobacco industry was on the verge of a seismic shift. The invention of rolling machines in the late 19th century made cigarettes cheap and widely available, transforming smoking from a luxury of the wealthy to a habit of the masses. Compact, disposable, and requiring no spittoon, cigarettes quickly outpaced other forms of tobacco use. What had once been a pastime of soldiers in wartime trenches soon became a cultural phenomenon, ushering in an era where smoking was not just convenient but also stylish. With Hollywood's embrace of the cigarette in the early 20th century, its dominance was sealed. Cigarettes changed everything. Unlike chewing tobacco and snuff, they were convenient, easy to use, and didn't require carrying a box of powder or places to spit the excess tobacco juice. They could be smoked quickly and discreetly, making them an ideal option for city dwellers, office workers, and soldiers alike. The introduction of the cigarette rolling machine in the late 1800s revolutionised production, allowing manufacturers to mass-produce cigarettes at an astronomical scale. This drove costs down, making them widely accessible to people of all social classes. Marketing took over from there, turning cigarettes from a simple tobacco product into a powerful cultural symbol. Early 20th century advertising campaigns linked smoking to health, relaxation, and even athleticism. Some brands promoted their cigarettes as doctor-approved, claiming they soothed the throat and improved breathing. But it was Hollywood that truly cemented smoking's image in popular culture. James Dean, with a cigarette dangling effortlessly from his lips, became the ultimate embodiment of youthful rebellion. Audrey Hepburn, holding her elegant cigarette holder in Breakfast at Tiffany's, made smoking look attractive and sophisticated. Smoking wasn't just a habit, it was a statement. World War I and II only accelerated the cigarette's rise. Soldiers received cigarettes as part of their daily rations, reinforcing their association with masculinity, endurance, and camaraderie. Wartime propaganda depicted cigarettes as a source of comfort on the battlefield, a brief moment of relief amid the chaos. When soldiers returned home, they brought their smoking habits with them, further entrenching cigarettes in everyday life. By the 1950s, nearly half of American adults smoked regularly. Billboards, magazine ads, and TV commercials featured glamorous men and women enjoying a cigarette after a long day, reinforcing the idea that smoking was a sophisticated and modern lifestyle choice. But behind the scenes, a storm was brewing. Scientists had begun to uncover the dark side of smoking, linking it to lung cancer and other serious health issues. At first, the tobacco industry dismissed these claims, funding studies to downplay the risks and launching ad campaigns to reassure smokers. However, as the evidence mounted, public perception began to shift. What had once been seen as a harmless indulgence was now under scrutiny, setting the stage for one of the biggest public health battles in modern history. The golden era of cigarettes came crashing down in the 1970s. After decades of misleading marketing and carefully crafted illusions, the truth about smoking was finally coming to light. The release of the 1964 US Surgeon General's report marked a seismic shift, confirming the undeniable link between smoking and lung cancer. For the first time, the government publicly acknowledged what the tobacco industry had long tried to suppress. Smoking was deadly. The fallout was immediate. By the late 1960s and early 1970s, warning labels appeared on cigarette packs, and restrictions on cigarette advertising began to take effect. The iconic TV commercials that had once glamorised smoking, featuring rugged cowboys and classy celebrities, were banned. The shift in public perception was underway. But the battle was far from over. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, tobacco companies fought to maintain their grip on the market. Despite mounting evidence, they continued to deny the full extent of smoking's health risks. High-profile court cases and congressional hearings exposed the industry's deceptive practices, revealing internal documents that showed Big Tobacco had known about the dangers of smoking for decades. Not only had they been aware, but they had actively worked to downplay the risks, mislead consumers, and even manipulate nicotine levels to make cigarettes more addictive. The lawsuits piled up. Whistleblowers stepped forward, peeling back the curtain on an industry that has spent billions protecting its bottom line at the expense of public health. The tipping point came in 1998 with the Tobacco Master Settlement Agreement, the largest civil litigation settlement in US history. Tobacco companies were forced to pay over $200 billion in damages, fund anti-smoking campaigns, and cease many of their aggressive marketing tactics. Gone were the days of cigarette billboards, cartoon mascots, and sponsorships of major sporting events. Smoking, once seen as glamorous, was now increasingly viewed as dangerous and socially unacceptable. With cigarette sales plummeting, the tobacco industry found itself at a crossroads. But instead of accepting defeat, it adapted. The industry's survival strategy was simple: innovation. If traditional cigarettes were under fire, they would develop new ways to keep nicotine consumers hooked. The cycle of reinvention had begun, one that continues to this day. As cigarette smoking declined, new nicotine products began to emerge. Some were old ideas repackaged for modern consumers, while others represented something entirely new. The tobacco industry, unwilling to relinquish its hold on the market, adapted by rebranding and innovating, ensuring nicotine remained a daily habit for millions. One of the earliest products to gain traction was snus, a Scandinavian smokeless tobacco that had been used for centuries. Unlike traditional chewing tobacco, snus came in small tea bag-like pouches that sat under the lip, delivering a steady dose of nicotine without the need for spitting. This made it cleaner, more discreet, and more socially acceptable, especially in countries where cigarette smoking was increasingly restricted. In the US, a more refined, modernised version emerged, Zyn. Marketed as a tobacco-free nicotine alternative, Zyn appealed to young professionals, athletes, and those seeking a smoke-free fix without the stigma of cigarettes. Its minimalist branding and convenience made it a hit, with users able to pop in a pouch anytime, anywhere, whether in the office, at the gym, or even on airplanes. But the biggest game changer was vaping. Electronic cigarettes introduced a completely new way to consume nicotine, eliminating the tar associated with traditional smoking. Vapes were initially marketed as a safer alternative, promising smokers a cleaner way to satisfy their cravings. The devices quickly evolved from bulky, cigarette-shaped models to sleek, high-tech gadgets. Juul, with its compact USB-like design and high nicotine pods, became incredibly popular, particularly among young users. The market exploded with new brands like Elfbar and iGet, offering rechargeable and disposable devices in a dizzying array of flavours, all designed to make vaping more appealing. At first, vaping was heralded as a public health breakthrough, a tool to help smokers quit, but it wasn't long before concerns emerged. Studies began linking vaping to lung damage, nicotine addiction, and cardiovascular risks. Perhaps most alarming was its popularity among teenagers. Schools struggled to curb the underage vaping, as flavoured pods and disposable vapes became the go-to nicotine fix for a new generation. Governments scrambled to respond, banning certain flavours, increasing regulations, and imposing age restrictions. But the vaping industry had already reshaped nicotine consumption in ways no one had anticipated. As traditional cigarettes faded from prominence, these new products ensured that nicotine remained embedded in daily life, proving that while the methods may change, the addiction remains the same.